Welcome to Choosing Adoption. I'm Donna Pope, and this podcast supports expectant parents considering adoption and birth parents after placement. Through real stories and guidance shared with clarity, faith, and compassion, we will connect you with others who offer their insights and experiences that will empower you and provide you support. Welcome to Choosing Adoptions. We're also probably going to use this for Adoption Utah because we're super excited to be here with Lynea. Lynea is one of the foremost voices in the adoption community to represent birth parents. And Lynea, we're just going to start right out by letting you tell us your story.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. I am a birth mother of 35 years. I placed my daughter privately and domestically. It was a very difficult decision, very much under a lot of scrutiny. Of course, that was 35 years ago. And so there was a lot of stigma that kind of came with birth mothers and choosing adoption in addition to that. So throughout the years, one of the things that I had found with my story was that I really didn't have a lot of support in the sense of how to maintain an open adoption. It was the time it was semi-open, and now I would say it was not even semi-open. But what little bit of information I did have and what little bit I did actually carried me through a lot of years. And then through the process of actually reuniting and under the duress of why they wanted to reunite, I completely went in it with no expectation other than the thrill of meeting her and to be a part of their family, even more so than what I was. And then throughout the years, I had found out way more than I bargained for. It was kind of opening Pandora's box. You just never know what you're going to get out of it. And it was a process I had to kind of learn. I had to learn how to, what is this relationship going to look like? What is the adopted parents and I's relationship going to be? And how do I muster all these feelings that I thought I had gone through? And I did go to counseling about 6 years post placement. And it's just a constant layer of processes that you have to go through as a birth mother, but that's life in general, right? And so it was just a surreal feeling. And what I found that a lot of people didn't have experience in was all those ups and downs of what adoption is and what that relationship looks like. And then how does that make me feel? And how do I deal with these emotions? For instance, when I was pregnant with my son, I was mourning the loss of my daughter while pregnant with my son. And no one could really understand what that meant. And so I didn't have that collaborative group of women of saying, hey, did you go through this too? Did you experience these things? And so it was very isolating, and it was very hard to manage these emotions and try to reach out for help and support. And so throughout the years when I moved back into Utah, I was asked to be part of Utah Adoption Council. And that was eye-opening because I got to meet everybody in adoption and what adoption looked like. And it also helped me learn how to have my voice in expressing my concerns as a birth mother in post-placement care and support and what we need and what that expectation is. And it's still in that learning process. But I just want birth mothers to see that there can be a healthy part of adoption and with the relationship versus the ugliness I think that we're putting out there as a stigma as birth mothers and reunification. So
let me just back up just a little bit. So when you first placed your child for adoption, a little boy, little girl?
Little girl.
A little girl. And you had a ongoing relationship with the adoptive family, right?
Yes.
But you just managed it on your own, just emailing and stuff back and forth?
That really dates me because emailing was still.
It wasn't even emailing. You sent letters.
No, let's see. No, we had phone conversations. The agreement was they would send me a picture, a letter every year around her birthday. And then every year for their Christmas, I would send her a gift and the family a gift. And it was kind of navigated through the attorney that they went through. So, and it always got lost. There was always a new secretary that had no idea what they were doing. So something always got lost. If something got displaced in some way, shape, or form. So we finally just decided to kind of give that personal information. But what's funny is at that time, they don't have the securities like they do now. So it wasn't hard to find out their personal information. I just respected their space until they were willing to open more of that door. But yeah.
And I know, and we don't necessarily need to go into some of the challenges. I'm aware of some of the challenges of that relationship. Suffice it to say, there are always challenges.
Always. There will always be challenges. I mean, that's the same thing with a marriage and friendships. And there's always going to be challenges, and there could be ups and downs, and you may grow into them and you may grow out of them.
For sure. And so as you kind of went through that, then you got to be known as a voice for birth moms, and you joined the Utah Adoption Council and started to let your voice be heard. Tell them a little bit about Life After Placement.
So I started out with Life After Placement. It was always a thought. And it was actually through, which is so funny, it was an adopted mother actually with Utah Adoption Council that talked to me later, because I kept advocating for what are we doing for birth mothers? Where's the support groups for birth mothers? And this woman kind of in a snide way said, well, it's always easier to do it yourself than expect others to do it. And I thought, ooh, it was like a challenge, I guess, because I hated that so bad. And so it was trying to find the key components of people. Who do I support and who helps me and what that meant. And I definitely kind of had a lot of bumps and bruises as to who those people were, from birth mothers to adopted parents to adoptees. And it eventually came down to about 4 of us. And really, it did come at a lot of pain for about 2 years. But it did come about, and we were, and we still are 501c3 and do support groups, and we're growing, and we're definitely learning a lot.
Now, one of the most amazing things you guys do each year is the Birth Mom Dinner. Tell us a little bit about how that's gone.
So that kind of came out the same way as coming up with Life After Placement. I had a birth mother who we had talked about another group that was putting on a Birth Mother's Day event, and she had asked me a little bit about it, and I kind of told her a little bit about it, and she's like, listen, I'm not going to come out and spend my day before Mother's Day to make my own sandwich and to do this whole junket type kind of thing. Not that it was meant to be bad, but she says, I want it to be worth my time and my while. Either that, I'm going to IHOP that my son's going to take me to with a Cheerio necklace. And I thought, she's got a point. You've got to step up and make it worthwhile. So at first we started out with Joseph Smith Memorial. They have phenomenal, beautiful, beautiful buildings, and the food's phenomenally there too. And the ambiance was so crucial. And I wanted these women to be served a 3-course meal, because a lot of these women have never had that before. And so, I mean, I guess the closest to a 3-course meal is something you can get at Applebee's or something, but nothing quite this degree of this being serenaded by live music, and to be honored, and to have somebody encouraging them, and to honor them, and to meet other birth mothers and finding a safe place. And then to walk out and see the fear that they come into, and then the happiness they walk out with, and to still hear about it. It still fills me full of joy of knowing, okay, if it helps one birth mother, I've succeeded in this. And it's just grown, I think now going on 8 years, and it gets bigger and bigger, but it's different every year. And I love that.
One of the things that's very obvious about how you feel is kind of a reverence, or at least a respect for women who choose to place a child for adoption. Now, you've been through it, and you know what it feels like. Those of us who have never been through it, we don't have that same guttural feeling. And so we're doing it from the outside and seeing that. But even we who have never been through it feel that respect for these women. Have you always felt like people feel that way towards them?
No, I actually run into a lot of people that I've had to refrain from my own personal beliefs and anger, and be very careful, again, finding my voice of how I present my story, because it's a very sense of reverence to this is a sacred thing for me. This is very true to me. I mean, that's like someone saying something derogatory about how you parent or how your child is. You don't want people to do that, and you'll probably automatically correct them. But what I found is a lot of people's perception of a birth mother is a woman who had her rights revoked, not a woman who chooses to have her rights revoked. And there's love from choosing that versus having your rights revoked. And I don't mean that derogatory to those women, but they jeopardize their children's lives versus they want the best for this child, and we're not able to provide that to them at that point in time in their lives. And maybe even 5-10 years, we still are not able to provide that to them. So I'm constantly having to educate people of what a birth mother is and the difference between the two different types of birth mothers, because we kind of have that stereotype of it just being one.
So I was talking with somebody the other day, and I said, I don't remember why I said it, but I said, I have never known a birth mom who didn't love her child. And she shook her head and she was like, what? Well, that's a remarkable statement. And I said, I don't know.
Even though your point, Donna, that are being making that decision because of poor decisions they've made themselves. When I've worked with women that are in the prison and they can't parent or whatever, I don't even know, less than 1% of the time, these women love their babies. And
I've never met anyone that did.
And
I would
in counseling, to what Lynea was saying, every woman I've ever worked with for 23 years, adoption is not a secret, but it is sacred. And so you're not hiding it from anybody, but I think many, many birth parents are super reserved to what Lynea is saying, because this is something that's very sacred and private. We're talking about a child's life, a family's life, and we're not talking about going and purchasing hot dogs at the store. I mean, this is real life, and you're going to share this where it's safe and it's sacred and it's filling.
Well, and it goes to the fact that I had to learn, you've got to have thick skin in doing this kind of work, right? And because if not, it could tear you up in the sense of, letting people's perception affect your own, or judging me as a birth mother. And I've had that happen several times where one mother that I kind of tried my best to just try to help educate her, and she wasn't about to have it. Her perception was that how dare we bring innocent children in this world but not taking the responsibility. And my comment to her was, well, what about some of us who was date raped? Because mine was based on a date rape. What am I supposed to do with that? You're judging that. And it's easy to judge if you've never been in that position. I think it's educating people to be respectful of somebody else's choice. And you may not like it, you may not agree with it, but I think that you have to find a way to respect it because it is done out of love. And to express that to a complete stranger is definitely not easy. And to try to help educate them is even harder because you've got that perception, what society puts out there versus what the reality is. And we're making adoption uglier again, which is, I'm sure we'll get to that later, but it's weird how it's just looked at as being a negative thing.
It is weird. Now, I think there's a couple of things. One is understanding birth moms in general. The perception often is that a birth mom is a 16-year-old that got in trouble after the prom or something like that. Well, that's not the case. The average birth mom is about 28 years old. The 80% of women who place their children for adoption already have other children. They have now reached a point where they just know that for whatever reason, they can't parent this child. And so they go into it not reactionary, but well thought through why they're making this decision. Do you want to address that a little bit?
Well, I mean, you can only be a single parent for so long. You have to have a tribe. I was told this years ago, and I think it's so funny. because it still stands true. You do have to have a tribe. If you're a single mother, you've got to have family that are willing to step up to the plate, or really good resources, in order for you to try to be a single parent and work at the same time, because that's a hard juggle to do. And it's not cheap by any means to be a parent, especially a single parent nowadays. And I think that people's perception of adoption is just, I don't know, Donna, you're going to have to be specific of how you want me to answer this question.
You just answered how you feel is right.
It's done out of sheer love. And I think that understanding the part of who you are as a person and how much as a mother you can give that child, it's a depth that only she can know. And I don't want to use the spirituality. There is spirituality into it, but I think that self-awareness of understanding what your capabilities are and what they're not, and what are you able to provide this child, and what is your long-term goal as a parent. If you choose to parent, what does that look like? Where do you want to go with this? And for a lot of these birth mothers who choose to parent can understand what that limit is. And she knows within herself of what she's capable of doing and what she's not capable of doing. And that, I don't think people realize, that's a self-awareness that people can go years not even having themselves. And they're having to find that self-awareness within a short period of time. I mean, 9 months to maybe a couple of months, depending on her ability to really want to wrap her brain around her choice. But it's the self-awareness that people just don't understand. Because I get the question all the time, or I shouldn't say question, it's more of the accusation of, I could never make that choice. And I said, well, I didn't think I could make that choice. I didn't get pregnant to want to make that choice, but I made it for the best interest of the child.
And so if you look at one of the challenges that we're seeing right now is sort of going back to this perception of a birth mom that I find just immensely challenging. And that's that she doesn't know her own mind. That without a doubt, she's in a difficult situation. Without a doubt, she's in a vulnerable situation. Without a doubt, she's struggling with the decision. But do you think that in that crucial, vulnerable position, she can know her own mind?
Absolutely. I mean, you think about it. I mean, a death is heart-wrenching, and it's excruciating. To a divorce, I mean, there's so many, even a death of a child. I mean, you have to find a way to grapple with the reality and how to find a way to move forward. And sometimes it's second by second, moment by moment. It just depends on that person. But she has that right, and she has that ability to make what's best for her. So yes.
And we often will say that we want to act in the best interest of the child. Here's my struggle. Does anyone know the best interest of that child better than the mom?
No. And I think that's where that misconception comes around. I think that it's hard for any woman who has a child to imagine placing that child in someone else's arms, and to have that trust and knowing in her heart, this is the right choice for this child. It's heart-wrenching, but I think it's very real to the fact that she knows what she's getting herself into. I mean, realistically, you don't go into this half-heartedly and think, again, I'm just going to magically just, get pregnant and place this baby for adoption. I mean, it's not how it works.
Lynea, will you address on that note with a birth mom being able to actually make what she feels is the right decision for her child, and for lack of better words, and then be forced to be landlocked within the state where her current address is and her current house is, to say, because you live here, you cannot look any further than the state in which you live to find the right home, the right placement, the right family.
I'm gonna spread that question out just a little bit more, Laraine. What option should be given to this woman as she's struggling with this decision?
Well, she should have every option given to her. I mean, she has the right to make that choice. I mean, that's like telling her, well, you can't go into the next city to a different hospital, but that's where my OBGYN is, or I want to pick a doctor, or I want whatever that may be. That's taking any woman's rights away from her. So why wouldn't you offer that to her? Why would anybody tell her what she should or should not do? Does that make sense? I mean, if she wants to have a home birth, she should have a home birth. That's her right. That's your choice and decision. If she wants to go to the hospital, have herself induced because she just can't handle another week of it and the baby's fine and the doctor and them come up with the agreement, this is in the best interest for you, let's move forward. But that's her right and that's her choice and decision. For anybody to tell her what she can and cannot do, I think you're taking her rights away. You're taking her rights away. And not being able to go to a different state because it is such a sacred decision that you have to make. And a lot of times you need time away from your family, or maybe the family, you just don't want them to know because you just can't bear anybody discouraging you from a decision that's already difficult for you to process in the first place. And a lot of times these women they don't have anything. They have nothing more to give this child other than the best life it can by choosing adoption. But it's still her right.
It seems like there are basically 4 needs that every woman needs when faced with this decision. One is she needs someone to be able to talk to think it all through, to make a plan, to look at the options that she has, someone that she can trust and count on to think it all through. Agreed? The second thing, she needs help. She needs help. She may be fine, but she may need housing help. She may need phone. She may need utilities. And she especially often needs medical support. And one of the challenges that we're seeing is that getting medical support when you maybe find out a little bit later on in your pregnancy, and now doctors won't accept a late-term pregnancy, or maybe there's some complications. Maybe there's some mental illness. Maybe there's even some substance abuse. And getting some doctors to take on those responsibilities, oftentimes they just can't. The most important, well, all of them are important, but another thing is finding a family that she loves and trusts, that she feels comfortable placing this child with. And who knows where that family's going to come from? She may live in Wisconsin and the family come from Hawaii. Who knows where they are? But having someone help her figure out where to find that family and then help her develop a relationship with that family is another important thing. And then have the option of where to deliver and how that delivery will happen. It is another thing that she can do. And then finally, an ongoing relationship with the family that's supported and can be comfortable throughout the years. Would you agree those are the needs?
Oh, absolutely.
Women.
It's crucial, all of them.
And so the question is, how does she get that help?
You know, it comes to her rights of what she chooses to do. Does she choose to go through an agency? Does she talk to an attorney? Does she talk to a church? She's got to talk to somebody, and she's gonna research it. And what's the main place now everybody goes to? Social media, the internet. And honestly, those are what nowadays, that's where it came from. Before it was the phone book. That ages me, but yeah. Well, I mean, it was church, state, and agency was at the time 35 years ago. Now you just have to get online, make a couple of phone calls or text somebody, You're taking, I think you're taking the personalization by doing that out. But that's just the way the culture is right now. So yeah, that's their go-to to get that information and find that information. Well, and I think now with birth mothers after they place, I think they're struggling and they're bargaining with them, their their emotions and their feelings. And not a lot of times do birth mothers go and get the mental help that they need to a therapist, because one, sometimes it's just too raw that maybe first or second year. It took me 6 years before I really realized I needed to deal with this, because I felt so confident with the choice that I made with the information that I had. And the reality is you're never going to completely get over it. I mean, you're always going to look back and have the things that you wish you did or didn't do. But the reality is you can't undo the past. You've got to move forward through life in some way, shape, or form in a positive way in order to be healthier. But you've got to choose to find a way to be better, not better all the time. And I think that mental health is not more addressed post-placement, but the reality is that really the agency's responsibility. Because again, that's her choice. If she doesn't want therapy and counseling and doesn't want to go through the agency, then that's her choice. And you have to respect her choice for that. If she does want it and she needs to have it, then she can look for it and hopefully find the right people for her to help her support what that means. But she has that right. I mean, I get birth mothers that join our support group from all across the country. So who's to say that they don't have that right? You know, they can only talk to the people in their state. So again, we're going back to you're taking your right away. That doesn't make any sense to me.
So when I was at NCFA, the National Conference for Adoption, we were at the director's dinner after we had a director's evening, and I raised some of these issues. And I raised the issue that there was an element there at the conference, a very, just very negative towards the rights of birth mothers to make certain decisions. And as we were sitting there, a number of people had expressed their opinions. But then the owner and director of Brave Love spoke up. And she said, I find it offensive that she was a birth mom, that anyone should tell me what decision I should make, or that my decision was wrong. And then her friend, who was also a birth mother, spoke up, and she said that she was an oncology nurse. And as an oncology nurse, when she would find out, when a patient would come and they would, have cancer, her job was to tell them all of the options. It was not her job to say what option they would choose. And whether she agreed with them or didn't agree with them, it was her job to say, here are the various options you have, and give them whatever resources that they could, and then honor whatever decisions that they made. I would think it's our job too, to do the same thing.
Absolutely. And who has the right to take that away from you? I mean, really, I've been down that road, and I do know what it's like, and it's a stressful thing to go through, but you have to weigh all of your options, and then you have to do what's best for you. And especially for birth mothers, you have to do what's best for you and this child. And I have to agree with her. It is offensive, because you're basically telling me I'm not smart enough or coherent enough or capable of making that choice. That's what I hear. And that's how it makes me feel. But
right.
Yeah.
So what recommendation I'm going to ask you to give recommendations to several people. I'm going to ask you to give recommendation to other birth moms. I'm also going to ask you to give recommendation to agencies. And then I'm going to ask you to give recommendations to legislators and policymakers. Start with whichever one you want.
Wow.
Good luck, Lynea.
Right. So let's start with the first one. The first one was
birth moms.
So, realistically, the hard part about this is we're in a sense of entitlement stage right now. It just, I think, nationwide, right? It's all about what's in it for me. And unfortunately, that creates a lot of fraud for a lot of reasons, and a lot of it's, what's in it for me. And I think the hard part is agencies, you guys are having to really kind of figure out the puzzle as to where she's going with this. Is she really wanting to choose adoption, or she's just looking for a place to stay, to consider her options, or are they just wanting a handout to kind of get them through whatever that may be? And the sad part is that annoys me, because as a birth mother who did make that choice, that's disheartening, to hear that you guys have to, that's painstaking. I mean, that's financial, but that's painstaking on all aspects of adoption. The adoptive parents, the hopeful adoptive parents, you as an agency and as a birth mom, I would hope she makes the right choice and the reason. But, you have the right to ask those questions. Ask every question you can possibly ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Talk to adoptive parents and talk to other birth parents. Talk to other states and talk about what their agencies are and what their requirements are. I mean, there's really no such thing as not asking enough questions, and make the best decision that you feel confident with. And in working our way into agencies, providing them with goals of what's your plan of action. I don't know, because I'm not there for those relinquishments that you guys do, but I think that I'm assuming, and I hope that does, and what women I have talked to, they've also considered it, of what is your 5 to 10 year plan? What is your hopes if you do choose to parent? Or what is your hopes that if you do choose to place a child for adoption, you still need a plan. You need a plan of action. You need to have some goals. You need to have something to move forward with, because you can only stay stagnant for so long. And as agencies, I would suggest that you ask that question at nauseum. But to knowing her rights, I mean, you can only talk about it to the same reason as what you said at nauseum, of making sure that they understand, because after a while, they're going to go, I don't want to hear this anymore. I've already made this choice and decision, or I'm already stuck with this. And that's her right. You're having to respect that. And there's just a huge tug of war with that, because there's so many different avenues that you guys contend with. And I know, because I talked to a lot of these birth mothers and what they had grappled with. I just before we did this phone call, 45 years. And her daughter is reunification, and what that process is for her, and how she's still processing it in her 80s. I mean, that's rough, and that it's a huge process for her. So as far as legislation goes, I mean, if you're not asking birth mothers these questions, you're not asking her what she wants and what she needs. I have yet to have anyone call and say, hey, this is what it is. Asking you agencies of what needs to be done, aren't you supposed to be advocate for these women? So why aren't they asking birth mothers? Why aren't they reaching out to birth mothers? Why aren't they, no offense, you guys are doing great and you're doing what's best, but if you're going to make laws, how is it beneficial for birth mothers? And I haven't heard that yet, other than knowing your rights. Well, you guys have to actually give them their rights before they even talk about anything more you're going to offer them. You have to explain to her what her rights are. At the very least, twice you have to have it read to her. And I think it's 25 to 30 lines that she has to initial, and you guys have to talk over it. You can find those rights online, and you can do that in any state, but she still gets to choose. And legislatures are not asking birth mothers, what can we do for you? I haven't heard that once. And to me, that's offensive, because you're making laws based on what? Your perceptions?
And so if we circle back around, the idea behind a child placing agency and the idea behind adoption in general is to act in the best interest of the child. And we all agree to that. What I think sometimes we forget, and I'll emphasize it again, is no one knows that what's in the best interest of the child better than the mom. And she's really the only one who can make that decision. Now, certainly if there's a birth father that's involved, bring him in and have him be a part of the conversation. But it's got to be their decision, and they have to be respected in that decision.
Absolutely.
So I I think there's two major things that we need to do in this, and they're so important. Recognize that the birth mother is capable and intelligent and has a mind that can think and do things, and respect that in her and give her the freedom to make the choices that she needs to make, and give her the help that she needs to make those choices. Laraine, anything else that you would say?
No, I think this has been marvelous. And I just, opening up the perspective of saying women, birth parents, birth mothers, they have a choice. They have a choice. They have an option. And I think I just have to agree with Lynea. It's belittling to say that we've all been pregnant, to say that I'm not thinking clearly, I don't have rights while I'm pregnant, but the next day after delivery, I have rights. I mean, we all have rights no matter any circumstance in life, right? The right to parent, the right to place, the right to do a kinship adoption, a guardianship scenario. The mom has the right to decide what's in the best interest of her child.
Yeah. And Donna, I'm going to kind of inject this because it kind of came up when I first started with Utah adoption. And one of the things I got to be a part of is changing some of the laws that were so inadequate at the time, and updating what those laws are and putting the exact wording in. And it was exhausting because I came home every day and I thought how insane and how awesome that is, that what the laws were back then to what they are today, and how grateful that I was to not only be a part of that. There was another birth mother that was also there to help with the wording and in changing some of the laws that really needed to be changed because they were old and inadequate. So, if there's something that needs to be changed, I think we have to, that's just life. We're always evolving and we're always changing. And I think if there's something that needs to be done legislation wise, then ask the ones who need it the most. You guys are being told what requirements are of you to maintain your licensing, right? But in the end, who's asking birth mothers what they want? What was missing in their adoption? What could we have done better as an agency? What could you have done better? What more could have been offered? And I get this all the time, and the reality of it is it still comes down to I did the best thing I could for the situation that I had. And I don't think that people realize that being a part of those laws and how they word it was out of respect to any expected mother who was going to come into adoption. And I remember every day I think it went on for like 2 months, that we were going through every part of the law. And I thought that wording is so important. And you can only do so much in changing the laws, right? But the regulations to those laws are what's crucial too. And like you read that part of what the birth mother's entitled to. I was a part of that. I was a part of that because it should be respected, and she should have that right and that capability. So we're going to take that off the plate and tell her what she should or should not think or feel or do. So again, let's come back to where are we asking these birth mothers? And you can't, and this is horrible to say, and I can say this being 35 years, the laws of what it was when I placed versus what it is today. I mean, it's leaps and bounds amazingly beautiful compared to what it is. Do I think there's always improvement? Of course there can be. But do I think we should take that away from birth mothers? We're still not asking the right question of how do other birth mothers feel? What rights do they have? And what do they think the agencies maybe need to change? Because so far, I haven't heard that, so.
Well, that's the conversation we're going to be having, that we're having. Lynea, thank you so much for this. Any final words you'd want to give to us?
Just, love, lots of love, and just respect that I think that you ladies have worked really, really hard for. And being a part of you guys in Utah Adoption Council, I think it's been 10 or 11 years now I've been in this. And the relationships I've had with each and every one of you, the love I see that's there for birth mothers, is just astounding. And even if there's something that's amiss, I never hesitate in calling anybody in any agency to the situation that may come up and arise, and how do we make this better? And I love the willingness that's been involved. And I think that's what we're missing, is the camaraderie of that professionalism of asking that question. What's the best interest for all of us to do what's right for birth mothers, and hearing their voices. So thank you.
Thank you. So they have the right to choose. Choosing adoption. That's what we're all about. All right. Talk to y'all later.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of Choosing Adoption. I'm Donna Pope. You and your story matter. Visit choosingadoption.com to find resources, community, and encouragement for your unique journey. You are not alone. We are in this with you.